Be strong, we need a new face to help do that. So nothing more than that. I feel good about the decision. I feel great to have my family here, my colleagues. I think we're only going to be stronger. We fought hard to win this majority and turn this country around, and this will be our best footstep for. Yeah, I messed up again.
You said at 8 a.m. that you were going to run for the speakership. Why change at noon? What happened those 4 hours?
You know, we had our conference, and there's calls into the district. I don't want making voting for speaker a tough one. I don't want to go to the floor and win with 220 votes. I think the best thing for our party right now is that you have 247 votes on the floor. If we are going to be strong, we got to be 100% united. And I think, you know what? Let's put the conference first, because that's what we're about to do. Look. I've been talking with a number of members. We've been thinking about this throughout the week, trying to see if we can get there. I just think it's best we have a new face.
Mr. McCarthy, how much did your comments about Benghazi last week play into your decision to step aside today?
Well, that wasn't helpful. Yeah, I mean, I could have said it much better. But this Benghazi committee was only created for one purpose: to find the truth on behalf of the families for the 4 dead Americans. I should not be a distraction from that, and that's part of the decision as well.
Thank you very much, guys.
There's been some rumors that a letter that was put out by Congressman Young saying that
No.
Can you just put a rest of those right now?
No. Come on.
Who do you think should decide?
Huh?
Who do you think?
I think the conference should be able to decide. Thank you all very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bianna Goladriga, and this is Yahoo News Live. We are covering developing news right now. As you just saw, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy has dropped out of the race for House Speaker. And as a result, current Speaker John Boehner has postponed the election to fill his seat. The decision came as a major surprise to many on the Hill and many in the media. McCarthy reportedly telling his colleagues just moments ago that he is, quote, not the right one to lead the conference. For more on this, Meredith Shiner is joining us. She's Yahoo News congressional correspondent. She's on the phone from Capitol Hill. Meredith, to say that this was a surprise is not an understatement, given that just a few hours ago, as we heard from the reporter, the speaker said he was confident that he was going to win and he was still seeking the post. Now, obviously, a huge change in events.
Well, and, Kevin McCarthy came up to the microphones and said, I kind of shocked you, didn't I? And it was a huge shock on Capitol Hill. But I think one of the things that was really interesting, I was talking to someone who was actually in the room as McCarthy told the conference that he'd no longer be seeking the speakership. A piece of news he told current Speaker John Boehner just moments before entering that room. He apparently was very quiet and standing away from the mics, and people were, yelling at him to speak up. And he said, I never came to Congress to be speaker. And I think that that's really interesting for someone who made a meteoric rise through Republican leadership. He would have been, had he become speaker, one of the youngest in terms of actual tenure speakers ever. And one of the things to remember about this entire election is that the person who was assumed to be the successor to Boehner, Eric Cantor, lost in his actual House race a summer ago in a huge surprise, I think, to Republican leadership, which is part of what made John Boehner stay. But now he's going to have to stay longer. I'm hearing from my sources on the Hill that October 30th departure date is potentially serious wishful thinking, with no one in line to actually ascend to replace him, and Congress still having to figure out how to extend the government's debt limit by early November.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought up Eric Cantor, because people are calling this the most stunning political development since Eric Cantor's primary loss. Many of McCarthy's colleagues as well surprised by this. Peter King saying the announcement left everybody stunned. You talk about what McCarthy said, that he never wanted the speakership job. I think for a lot of people that's hard to contemplate and relate to, given that just a few weeks ago he was the front runner. He was out there every day saying saying that this is what he was fighting for and what he wanted and what he felt he would win. He won the endorsement of John Boehner. What happened over the past week, and how much of it was Benghazi related?
So just a few hours ago, he was still the front runner for the position. And I think, in fact, had he continued, he ultimately would have become Speaker. I think one of the things that he said, in his brief exit interview with reporters just a few moments ago was that he didn't want to go to the floor and only win with 220 votes. Yesterday, the House Freedom Caucus, which is the farthest right wing of the House Republican Conference, said that they would vote in block, about 40 members, for Daniel Webster of Florida, who is one of the conservative, or I guess I should say ultra-conservative opponents to McCarthy's bid. At the end of the day, what he said about the Benghazi committee, I don't know that that offended conservatives within the conference. I think that it certainly sparked media discussion, and it definitely gave red meat to the Hillary Clinton campaign. But I'm not sure that that actually shifted internal dynamics. I think the systemic problems within the House Republican Conference right now, the same forces that forced John Boehner out, were never going to make this job easy for Kevin McCarthy. And potentially within the first few weeks of his speakership, he was going to have to raise the debt limit and fund the government, which are two things that the conservatives in his conference, the ultra-conservatives, are always entirely against. So I think that, for Kevin McCarthy to say that he never wanted to be Speaker, that's a really easy answer. I think that obviously he was very ambitious and wanted to rise within Republican ranks, but the tensions that made John Boehner's life difficult were also going to make his life difficult. And I don't know that anyone on that leadership team really sees a way out or a way forward, given that the farthest right wing of their party is so anti-government, it makes governing nearly impossible.
So let's talk about this, because the speakership is the third most important to the president's role in this country. It's the highest elected Republican job right now as well. Republicans have a majority in the House and in the Senate. But what is going on dynamically within the party itself? Is the party in chaos right now?
So chaos is a really great word that we love to use to ascribe anything that sort of seems discordant. So I'm loath to use the word chaos, but I do think that they're sort of facing an existential crisis right now. Because remember when House Republicans took back the majority in 2010, they did it riding a Tea Party wave, exploiting some of that conservative energy, and by recruiting conservative candidates. Kevin McCarthy, Eric Cantor, and Paul Ryan, who was the vice presidential nominee in 2012, ran a program for the 2010 election named Young Guns. And they looked for young, fresh-faced conservatives to help them win back the majority. But those are some of the same members that have been really, really difficult and who have refused to go along with leadership. Another thing to remember, just sort of in terms of how Washington has changed, is that this particular Republican leadership team got rid of earmarks, which was one of the ways that they could get some conservatives on board with different bills by enticing them with different pieces of legislation that would help their district. So they've gotten rid of the sticks and they've gotten rid of the carrots that help make members go along with what they were trying to do. And I think that that's made it really difficult for them to govern.
And there's been a lot of wishful thinking about Paul Ryan joining the race as well. Paul Ryan tweeted saying he will not. He said, quote, Kevin McCarthy is the best person to lead the House, and so I'm disappointed in this decision. Now it is important that we as a conference take time to deliberate and seek new candidates for the speakership. While I am grateful for the encouragement I've received, I will not be a candidate. I continue to believe I can best serve the country and this conference as chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. So Paul Ryan is out of the running, but there's Jason Chaffetz, as you mentioned, Daniel Webster, Tom Cole of Oklahoma. His name has been thrown around as well. What are you hearing?
Well, Bianna, as we all know, people who have run for vice president or have served as vice president always want to be president. So I think for Paul Ryan, the idea of ascending to the speakership. In our country's history, only one speaker has actually become president, and that hasn't really happened in the modern era. So I think if that's something you have dreams of doing, you can't agree to be speaker. So Paul Ryan was once a favorite of Boehner to replace him. He's obviously very popular with conservatives. So your question is a real valid one, and what I'm hearing from my sources on the Hill is that no one knows. I don't think anyone thinks that Jason Chaffetz or Daniel Webster is going to be the next speaker. But honestly, and I tell you this, like from people I have talked to for the past 6 years, I've never talked to people who are more baffled or more confused by what's about to happen next, because I think they genuinely have no idea. And I think that was one of the reasons why John Boehner stayed as long as he did. You know, when Eric Cantor left, he wanted to make sure that McCarthy was sort of groomed to ascend in that role. And, you know, he put in that time. He announced he was leaving. And clearly that, you know, wasn't enough for some of the most conservative members of his conference. So now they're really faced with a dilemma. And I don't know that they know, and I certainly don't know who the next speaker is going to be.
Yeah, John Boehner certainly facing a dilemma as well. No end game for him since we don't have a vote date. He thought he was buying McCarthy sometimes by extending the vote. That clearly wasn't enough. As we just announced, Kevin McCarthy has stepped down from the role from his run as Speaker of the House. John Boehner, incidentally, tonight will be taping on The Tonight Show. Interesting to see what his comments will be on this unexpected development. But of course, we'll be following all the latest here on Yahoo News. And Meredith, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for your insight and your expertise.
Thank you for having me, Bianna.
And we always look forward to hearing what you have to say. So use hashtag Yahoo Live and let us know what you think about the latest on this bombshell news from Capitol Hill. We'll be back in a few minutes to cover another story making political waves today over controversial tweets by Rupert Murdoch about Ben Carson.